Everybody, it's David, John, and Krista Gaynor with Innovative Improv Solutions. Good morning, Krista.
Good morning, David.
Good afternoon to me, because we're in
Ah,
different time zones.
that's right.
And good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you guys might be. Well, today we're going to talk about some collaboration blockers, right?
Yeah, so we put out a post a while ago that seemed to get a lot of fun attention around collaboration blockers, and we thought we'd just come on the Provcast and talk about it a little bit more. Um, so, what are I can start with what I think is a big collaboration blocker, which is just it's so simple. It's just constantly interrupting or inserting your own idea before someone can get their initial idea or thought out on the table. So I think that's a really big collaboration blocker.
One of my favorite examples of that is, and we give these in our workshops, we give this example in particular is where you're at a party and uh, you're telling a story and the person's going, So anyway, right? And so they really haven't listened at all. All they've been doing is thinking about what they're going to say and what their story is. But that translates into the workplace as well. People aren't really listening and sometimes, and then taking in what that person said, making sure they address that, which is kind of the yes and thing that we talk about too.
Yeah, I was just going to say that yes and piece comes in because even if you can, and we've heard clients say this, that they'll take that yes and they'll take it into meetings and that they will say, for this amount of time, we're just going to yes and ideas. And what that actually does is it helps to maybe add on to an idea or morph it or expand it, the thought process. But it doesn't lock, it doesn't shut people down. And I think that's the thing that is one of the tricks around healthy and great collaboration is allowing the ideas to expand even perhaps further than you would ever be able to actually enact, right? Like let the
Yeah.
idea expand, get bigger, maybe even ridiculous, because there might be something in there that is just a corner or little bit of an idea that you could bring into an experience that you never would have explored if you just everything down and made it small from the start.
Yeah, and you and I have worked with engineers, and I think it's fair to say that they can think a little more black and white.
Mhm.
Uh and we'll talk about that in a second too, because we are going to talk about like the spirit of mistakes and things, and sometimes engineers, it's not that they're trying to be rude to people. They just literally their brains think a little differently. And so that yes and piece they really respond to sometimes when we say, well, what if you, because we do a drill called the yes and drill, where we break things down, where you go step by step by step, more than you ever would in life.
Sure.
But like what you said, what it does is it gets you to a place in an idea because you're breaking it down so much that you get an idea that you may not have thought of. Or you gradually get to where, oh, okay, this is not going to work. But at least you got there gradually without just shutting somebody down.
Right. And I think especially when you're working with like the engineers, they love, I mean, part of being an engineer or working in some of these fields is to poke holes in some of these ideas
Yeah. Yeah.
because so that you can find the places where you can fill the hole, so to speak. So I think too, when you go step by step by step by step, you don't you can find all of those places that might need support. And if you're shutting people down when they might have an idea of something, especially when you're talking with about things that have any sort of user design or just
Mhm.
step by step processes that you've got to walk through to get things done, the best way to make sure you've hit everybody's ideas is just to slow down. And it's sort of that whole theory I talk about it a lot. It's like the slow down to speed up. And I know, David, you'd mentioned like 10 minutes is like taking 10 minutes to really think through an idea or talk through
Mhm.
it and really hear everybody's ideas, thoughts, and concerns. That could save you so much time on the other end. What if there's a person who is not willing to speak up because they're used to being shut down and they have the key thing, the key step, the key concern that could change everything. You have to, and that speaks to sort of what we're headed to, I think, talking about is like the culture you set up to make sure that everybody's ideas are welcome and that people are not, shutting down.
Yeah, well, let's break that down for a second. So that's another collaboration blocker, which is, right, if you're a manager or the leader of a group, I think you want to be very careful in creating an environment where people can feel free to just put things out. That 10-minute thing you talked about, a lot of times we think, oh my gosh, even 5 minutes feels like, no, we don't have time, we don't have time. Well, 5 minutes is nothing. And you just spew ideas. That's how writers do it, right?
Mhm.
I've written a solo show. In the first version, there's a lot of good things that come out, but it certainly isn't, it's not the finished version, but there are things that come out, right? So what if you took 5 minutes, just let everybody do that? The uh if you're going to make mistake, you got to let people make mistakes or put things out that may not work because like you said, if people don't feel that they can throw something out for fear of being shunned about it, then you may not get that good thing.
And I think, I've heard a lot of companies say that they value risk, making
Mm.
mistakes, that they really value thinking out of the box, like all of these things that they will say, yet they'll get into meetings and it is not apparent to anybody there that those things are
Yeah.
valued. And
Yeah.
so I would say that, just because it's sort of a, buzzword on the pamphlet, so to speak, or on the social media about your company,
Yeah.
it goes so much deeper. That culture is something that you really have to foster in a way that is intentional. And people can smell it. They can smell it if they don't feel like they can say something safely and not be laughed out of a room proverbially. So I think it's
And it's
really
important to
important to
remember, oh, sorry, see, I just
no,
cut you off. No, see, I did exactly what we said not to do.
that's just the Zoom lag.
Very kind. Uh, but it's by virtue of, and we've learned this through working with different people and reading different people's philosophies, right? By virtue of coming up with new ideas, you're going to make mistakes. That's part of it.
Yeah.
Now, the goal is not to make mistakes, to not make mistakes. The goal is to how do we deal with them? But an idea that doesn't work is not a mistake.
No. No, and there's actually studies around. I mean, I know people can go find it. It's like that idea that the glue that was on the sticky note, that was on Post-its and sticky notes was actually
Yeah.
meant to be something else, and it
Hmm.
failed, and then sticky notes were created. So like and I think when you're a creative, we are very used to when we write or we produce things or we direct things, we are very used to like trying things out and then having to adjust. But the that moment where that thing didn't work is almost 100% of the time the bridge to the thing that works. And had you
Mm.
not done it, you wouldn't get to where you were going. So, I think that creating spaces where that is really, almost celebrated, these ideas of like we tried something, it didn't work, but look where it led us, is a really important piece of the puzzle on letting people collaborate in a way that feels like everyone's in on it, you know?
Yeah, and I think what this makes me think of is in our workshops, we talk so much about, look, this is not an acting class. What we're sharing with you is the thought concepts and the ideas that improvisers use, because really all improv is really heightened communication.
Right.
So the other thing we talk about is this is also a class in emotional intelligence.
Mhm.
So this umbrella, really, all of what we're talking about falls under, do you have uh, an awareness of your communication style and your emotional intelligence? Do you have an awareness when you are in a conversation? Are you listening well? Right? What is your tone? Um, because that leads to all of these things that you're talking about, feeling safe, feeling that I could make a mistake, um, having an aware, all it takes is for somebody to just feel heard,
Mhm.
and it can change the dynamic of that room incredibly.
Yeah, so I would say in terms of some tips on how to walk into a room with your team and create maybe a different environment around collaboration would be some of the things we've talked about. Set up specific amounts of time where you're going to say we're going to take 5 or 10 minutes and all we're going to do is brainstorm and there are no bad ideas. And make sure that every single person in that room has an opportunity to participate.
Mm.
Really focus on listening, like, give that. I would say learn to be okay with silence. I would in certain rooms I might actually go in and say we're actually going to spend 3 minutes. I'll set a timer and we're all just going to be quiet and think about this problem. Think about this thing that we're trying to solve and
Yeah,
let
and even
people
maybe
have some
write down,
space.
yeah, write down some ideas.
Yeah.
Do it in silence. Yeah.
Yeah, and just to and that also helps your introverts, by the way, or the folks who are neurodivergent who might need some additional quiet. So there are ways to continue to foster this collaboration. Fostering that spirit of helping and adding on. Yes, and is a hugely impactful tool for that. Are there any other tools that you can think or tips that you could think of, David, that might
Yeah.
help?
I think something that helps me is a couple of slogans that I like, which are how important is it?
Mm,
So if if somebody else has an idea and it's going to work just fine, how important is it for my idea to be the one, right? So how
great
important is
point.
it? If it isn't that important, then let it go, right? Do I want to be right or do I want to be happy? And I think you and I have talked about as a manager, maybe I'm the boss, right? But somebody that I'm managing has an idea for the project that's going to work just as well. Just empower them and let that be instead of do I, no, it has to be mine. No, it doesn't.
Yeah.
If anything, that will make them feel even more comfortable with more ideas and we're all in it together. You have to sometimes, there has to be humility. Think about some humility and think about your ego.
Yeah, that's a great point.
The other one, oh, let me just this one
Yeah.
too, because we've talked about this in our workshops. So we want to be careful about perfectionism.
Mm,
We want to be careful about, there's a great phrase, perfectionism leads to procrastination, which leads to paralysis. And I think a lot of times that's what writers face when you hear writer's block.
yeah.
So we want to be careful about, but that kind of goes into what we were talking about earlier. Just spew stuff out. Don't worry about things being right.
Yeah, I always I have because I think I have that perfectionism tendency, and one of the things I have written down sometime is imperfect motion forward.
Mm.
So that I'm like, no, the goal is actually to take the step forward, not that it's perfect. It's the forward motion is the thing. So
I've heard this thing. I've heard it a number of times now, but the first time I heard it was a quote from Michael J. Fox, of all people. And it was that I don't strive for perfectionism. That's God's business. I strive for excellence, something along those lines.
oh, that's
And
great.
I thought, I love that because I totally get the distinction between that.
Yeah. All right. Well, I hope that was helpful. That's all the time we have for today's Provcast. So if you have any thoughts, ideas, put them in the comments and always reach out to us if we could help your team in any way. We are Krista and David of Innovative Improv, and thanks for joining us.
Have a great day.